While people are concerned about AI taking people's jobs, one school district is utilizing AI to help middle school and high school students find their dream careers. Then, RTI, IEP, 504, ELL, and all the other acronyms, what do they mean and how can we understand them to be able to support diverse learners in our classrooms? And then, I'll be answering a subscriber question about how to quickly get students' attention. All of that on this episode of New Teacher Big Impact, the podcast. Impact begins now. Welcome to New Teacher Big Impact, the podcast. I'm your host, former terrible teacher turned two-time teacher of the year, Daryl Williams Jr. And today we're going to get started with the warning bell, which is the segment where I share a popular news story in education right now and how it affects us as educators. But before we dive into it, you know that this season is sponsored by Impact. And Impact is if you were to take Netflix and Facebook and put it all together. We call it Faceflix, right? Netflix, Facebook, put it together. You have the scrolling capability of Netflix where you can look for content depending on how you feel. You want a comedy today, you want a horror today, you want a thriller today. What suits your fancy? You go find content that you are all about, that you want to find, but as well as the Facebook community group aspect where you can find a group for, girl moms or donut dads or dog cousins, right? You can find a group based off of the things that you like. That's what Faceflix would be. But if all of those things were centered around how to make sure that you become a better teacher, that's what Impact is, because you can find professional development based off of the thing that you need. Is it classroom management? Is it student engagement? Is it parent involvement? It is time management. Based off whatever suits your fancy that you need assistance with, there's a professional development in there for you, but also community support, a like-minded community of individuals that you can ask questions about or from, that you can give resources to. There are also resources in the workbooks and downloads, and there's so many different things inside the Impact community to help you become the teacher you've always wanted to be and make the impact you've always wanted to make. And you can get started simply today by clicking the link in the description below. Let's dive into the warning bell because I am super interested about this topic. There is an AI chatbot that is helping middle school students find their dream job. This AI chatbot is called Sassy, and it's short for Sasquatch. And it was built in based off with the Oregon School District or Oregon District of Public Education. They fused with a nonprofit called Journalistic Learning Initiative and Play Lab AI, and they partnered to create Sasquatch, which is an AI chatbot that can help you explore different careers. This is super interesting to me because, again, so many people are thinking about how AI is taking people's jobs, and this school district got innovative and said, well, how about we use AI to help people find the job of their dreams? Over the last couple of years, there's been this big push towards career readiness. As a matter of fact, even 47 states in the last year have passed career readiness laws, and that was in just 2023. So there are so many people that are saying we have to get students ready to get into their careers, but there's so many students that are saying, I don't even know what career I want. And we can't fault them. They're 12, 13, 14 years old, or even 16, 17 years old and saying, I don't even know what I want to do with my life. And think about it for yourself. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life when I was 12, 13, 14. I wanted to be a comedian, honestly. And my mom told me I wasn't funny. So then I had to give up that dream. I really do believe that I probably could have been okay at it. But anyway, I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to be a teacher. And I settled in on teacher. So there's so many different options, of things that you wanted to do. I also wanted to be a radiologist, and my mom never lets me forget that because she always says, you're gonna be making so much more money, but whatever. So these AI chatbots have been created to help students find their dream careers. And some people might be thinking that, man, even with the implementation of this chatbot, it's taking away careers like counselors. There are school counselors that students go to be able to help them understand what their dream career might be. But the CEO of this organization was saying, well, it's not really the fact that it's replacing the counselors, but it's helped giving them more power. So they're saying that they don't want to replace their expertise, but they want to enhance it. What the AI chatbot does is, all those pamphlets that you'll see about all careers that are possible when you are going to the counselor's office, where they're like pamphlets or they send you to a website. So basically, the AI chatbot kind of read all of the pamphlets, all the information, all the things that the counselors would be able to do. And what it does is it asks students questions about some of their interests, and it aligns them to a career that would fulfill some of those interests, similar to what a counselor would do. But the way that this district is putting it is that, well, now when the students go to the counselor after utilizing this chatbot, they're coming not with a blank slate saying, I don't know what I want to do with my life. They're coming and saying, hey, I'm interested in this career. Can you tell me more about it? So what they're saying is it's taking away some of the rote kind of memorization from the counselor, not memorization, but it's taking some of the rote actions that they're doing, where just kind of going through all different kind of careers, and the AI is doing that part. But then once they find something that they're interested in, they can go deeper with the counselor. So that's what they're saying, and that's how they're saying that they're seeing that it can be helpful. So we can see. But if you're worried about, well, should we even integrate? Should we even integrate with AI? Like we saw what happened in LA. And if you didn't see what happened in LA, in the Los Angeles Unified School District out of California, they incorporated an AI tool, and that lasted for about 6 months before it got shut down because it was compromising student data, and that's never a good thing. So after privacy concerns, they shut down after 6 months, and the CEO and the company had to lay people off and go through furloughs and all that kind of stuff because the school district wasn't using it anymore. They invested like $6 million into it, and that all it was just a big mess. But what they're saying here in Oregon is, what I noticed, the issue there is that they were collecting student data. This AI chatbot doesn't need any student data, nor does it collect it. And as a matter of fact, if you try to input student data, it says we actually don't need any personal information. So they're asking questions. It doesn't need to know your name, doesn't need to know what grade you're in, and your age, those types of things. It just asks you about your interest. And so that's how they're saying they're going to stay out of the courts and out of the legal system, because they're refusing to receive any student data or information. So they don't think they'll face any privacy concerns with that, right? So I think that is very interesting. Here's one of the things that Sassy can do, right? Sassy, I don't know how they came up with that name, but well, I mean, it's short for Sasquatch, but I don't know why they came up with that name. But here's one of the things that Sassy can do. It'll ask students a question about some of their interests, and then it'll provide pathways to an enjoyable career. So it'll tell you what careers you might enjoy the most, whether or not you need to go to college for this career, what local colleges offer that major, what are the requirements to get into those local colleges. Also, here's some internship opportunities. Here's how you apply to those internships. So it's giving you all of this information based off of the interest survey that you complete, if you would, which I think is kind of neat. One of the things that the CEO said in the article is that a lot of times students are coming with interests, and maybe some teachers with antiquated views, or that aren't as hip as you would with current career options, would misdirect a student. So if a student comes to you and says, well, this wasn't what they said in the article, this is me now. If a student comes to you and says, yeah, I want to game on and stream games on Twitch, you might say that's a hobby. Or not you, but there may be a teacher that says that's a hobby. You just want to play video games. While there are some people who are hitting multiple six figures, seven figures, and just streaming their game, and they're doing something that they enjoy, something that they like to do. They started a business where they are streaming video game content, and they're receiving way more money than I ever have in my life for it. And some students are interested in doing this, and some teachers are guiding them to say, well, you're not really, that's not a real career. Whereas students might argue that it is, and the AI chatbot might move them in that direction. So my reaction to this is, I believe it is a good thing that we are utilizing AI to help in a positive direction. I do believe that it's not going to be perfect. Just like, Los Angeles Unified District thought that their AI was a good idea until they ended up in the court system and all that kind of stuff because of student privacy data. And I think this, as they're saying they're correcting that, I think there's going to be another issue that comes about, And I think as AI is still kind of growing and developing, there's going to be a lot of different things that we didn't even think about, like oopsies, if you would, that we come across. So I'm not super, super high on it, that like, oh man, this is going to change the world. But I think it's cool that we're becoming innovative. And I do think that it would be helpful because, just being honest, again, with that exact same Twitch situation, there's so many students that are interested in careers that we I'm grown now, I'm 31, as we as old people don't necessarily see as effective careers or substantial careers, but they actually are, especially if you know how to monetize, if you understand the business side of it. Entrepreneurship is growing a whole lot more. And the number one growing small business is actually content creators, right? So people are saying, I want to open a business and I want to open up a barbershop. I want to open up a restaurant. I want to open up, a clothing store. And people are like, awesome, man, going for you. But if somebody says, I want to become a YouTuber, sometimes people are like, that's not a real job. When in actuality, that's the fastest growing small business. So I think in order to stay ahead of the curve and to really get students where they are interested in it, I think that this is helpful because I think it'll move students in the right direction. What that means for us as educators, I want to speak to my people who are afraid of AI. And I want to let you know that AI is coming. You just have to decide how you're going to respond. It's one of those things that you're not going to be able to stop. And I'm not going to impose my beliefs on you. But here's what I am going to say. It is coming. And I look at it like the evolution from chalkboards to whiteboards to smart boards and beyond, right? To where we are now and to where we're going. You can be that teacher that says, I'm only going to teach with the chalkboard. Like, I'm never giving up my chalkboard. Okay. The fact that you decide to never give up your chalkboard is not going to stop schools from replacing chalkboards with whiteboards and whiteboards with smartboards. Like, it's not going to stop, or, there's still whiteboards that exist, obviously, but you know what I'm saying? There's not too many chalkboards. But if you're the teacher that's saying, no, I need to use my chalkboard and get my chalk, and that's the way that students learn best, it would benefit you to recognize that, things are going to change, right? Now, whether you decide to change with it, that's on you. But recognize that AI is strong. AI is going to come regardless. I think it would be wise. Now, these are my beliefs. I believe that it is wise for us to understand how to utilize it so that we don't utilize it in harmful ways, but that we utilize it in effective ways. And I think that that is a really good idea. So AI is coming. You can't fight it. And I think in 10 years, and it may even happen sooner, but I think in 10 years, we won't even be having conversations about it. I think it'll be so seamlessly integrated into the things that we're doing on a day-to-day that people are going to wonder how we lived before AI. 20 years. All right. Definitely by 20 years, people are going to wonder how people lived before AI. Right. But as we're in this transition phase, it feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. But my message is just that it is coming, and it is coming into our schools as well. So it's got to get with the times, and even in getting with the times, we have to recognize that one of the things that getting with the times means is that we are seeing a growing number of students with disabilities, and we're seeing a growing need for support for students with disabilities. And although these things have been legal since 1970s, right? Sometimes some people don't take diverse learners as seriously as possible when it comes to RTI, when it comes to IEPs, 504s, and those things of that nature. So our teacher toolbox today is going to help us be able to understand what those acronyms mean and how to utilize some accommodations and modifications to make sure that we support diverse learners right after this. Never underestimate your teaching. There's 1% that sets you apart from everybody else. And that 1% is how you're going to make your impact.
He was exciting, funny. He is just real.
This was like monumental.
If you view your 1% as if it's a deficiency, you'll operate as if it is. But if you view your 1% as if it's your amazing, you'll operate with confidence. And I need some more people as we step into this next school year to walk confidently knowing that your differences are not your deficiencies. Your differences are not your drawbacks. Your differences are not your downfalls. But when you let your differences live, that's when you can make a difference in students' lives. And I can't wait to see these teachers enact their 1% amazing and make the difference that only they can. If you would like for your school district to be empowered as well, you can click the link down below and our team will reach out to you. Welcome to the Teacher Toolbox, which is the segment where I help you master a principle to help make sure that you become a highly effective teacher. And the beginning portion of this season, we've been talking about lesson planning, and now we're transitioning into supporting diverse learners. But this actually is also a course that lives inside of Impact. There's a course that says how to support diverse learners, colon RTI 504 IEP plans and things of that nature, because we know that it is not a secret that students don't all come to us on the same level. Some of us are way advanced, some of us are, have some achievement gaps, but students are on a variety of levels. But it is our job as the educator and the moral authority in that classroom to diversify, to make sure that we reach learners where they are and help them to get where they need to be. But in order to do that, we've got to know what these things are. So what is RTI? What is a 504? What is an IEP? We're just gonna go through the actual definition of those things and kind of how to differentiate. But if you're looking for the whole entire course, remember, that's already inside of Impact, as well as the course workbook, as well as a supportive community that you can ask questions of and help support you along the way. But here we go, which is lesson number 1. What are IEPs, 504s, and RTI? Let's break it down. An IEP is an individualized education plan. And an IEP is not something that we give the bad kids to turn them good. It's not something that we give the low kids to give them a pass. It is really a legal document that is required under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, right? So basically, IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it's a federal law that ensures that individuals with 13 specific disabilities are given access to a free and appropriate public education until they're the age of 21, right? It's been around since 1975. So the goal is that students with disabilities are in educational settings that are as close to possible as general education programs or general education classrooms. So the thought behind it is that students with disabilities don't necessarily need to be pulled out or need to be in a separate setting, again, unless their disability requires them to, but that there are some disabilities that students can be inside of a general setting. And the goal is that they want the students to be in the classroom of their peers, and not looked at as they're in that class over there or things like that, but that they can exist in kind of general education classrooms. So instead of segregating students with disabilities, the goal is to provide them support in the least restrictive environment or general education classrooms. And that's really what an IEP is. So that, again, the individualized education plan, where they're saying students are going to be here inside this general education classroom, and we're going to provide support, accommodations, whatever the kind of things that the students need, modifications in order for them to kind of be successful. Although they have the disability, we don't want that to kind of be a hindrance. So that's what an IEP is for, and that's different than a 504. So some people may mistake them, or some people may think that they are the same. We're going to dive into the difference between an IEP and 504, but basically a 504 is definitely different. A 504 is part of the Rehabilitation Act, which is actually 1973, and that ensures that students with disabilities receive accommodations that allow them to access the general education. So with the 504, well, I want you to think about it like this. The student has a disability that there are things that are roadblocks from them being able to access the general education curriculum. But we can do things to remove those roadblocks to make the general education curriculum more accessible for these students. So the difference is IEPs are going to provide special education services. 504 plans provide accommodations without altering the curriculum. All right, so are you seeing the difference there? With a 504, the student has a disability, there's some sort of roadblock. The goal of the 504 is to help remove the roadblock so that they can have access to the general education, the general classroom education, or the general education curriculum, I should say. But inside of the IEP is specialized education. They may have somebody that's working with them one-on-one inside of the classroom. They're inside the general education classroom, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing the exact same thing as the rest of the students in the classroom, right? They're just in that general education classroom. So what is the difference? There's a couple of different ways that we can look at the difference between IEP and 504. So we can look at the eligibility differences, the services that are provided, the developmental process, and the parental rights, okay? So let's break it down. I hope this is making sense. I hope that somebody is not sitting there like, what? I'm overwhelmed. I got you. Relax. I got you. All right, let's break it down. I'll show you the difference between them. With eligibility, the difference between an IEP and 504 when it comes to eligibility is that for an IEP, remember, there are 13 disabilities that are listed in IDEA that somebody would be able to qualify for an IEP for. Things such as autism, like learning disabilities, speech, language impairments, things like that. They need special education services. All right. A 504 plan, way more broad. A lot more disabilities can qualify for a 504 plan. But the basic principle is it's any student with a disability that substantially limits the major life activities. So things like learning, walking, reading, right? And the 504 plan for students is not intended for specialized instruction, but again, it's accommodations to access the general education curriculum. So perhaps a student that has to, maybe they recently had surgery or they're on this medication that makes them go to the bathroom a lot. It's not that they need a different curriculum. It's just that they need to have frequent breaks so that they can go to the bathroom as needed because it would be unfair for them to have to sit in the classroom and be forced to hold it because now that's a barrier for them to be able to access the general education curriculum. In terms of services provided, here's how an IEP and a 504 differ. With an IEP, they're gonna provide specialized instruction and related services. So maybe speech therapy, occupational therapy, counseling, right? It outlines specific and measurable education goals and the services that are needed to meet those goals. Whereas with the 504, we're going to provide accommodations and modifications to ensure that the students have equal access to education. But it doesn't include specialized instruction, right? So maybe it would be, extra time on tests or preferential seating or the use of assistive technology, maybe for somebody that can't see or hear too well. So those are the types of things that exist inside of the 504. How does it differ in the developmental process? The IEP, that's the process where it's going to take a lot. There's a formal team. We need parents involved, students involved, the general education teachers, the special education teachers, an administrator. Like there's a formal team and a lot goes into making sure an IEP is formed and put in place, that the goals are set right and things of that nature. It's highly detailed and highly regulated. Whereas the 504, I don't want to say it's more relaxed, but the school level decides who's gonna put the 504 together. So maybe it's like a counselor, or there's maybe an internal team that works on 504s and things like that. It doesn't necessarily need to involve a formal meeting process. It can or can't, but just know, like, the IEP, that's definitely the one that's gonna take a lot more, because that again is highly detailed and a highly regulated process. And in terms of parental rights, an IEP, parents are going to have stronger legal rights. And again, they're devolved in the development. They're met with at least once a year to make sure that, we're aligned in our goals and things like that. So that's definitely a more involved process for parents. Whereas a 504, they can participate, they can raise their concerns. They still have rights to the grievance process and stuff like that. But the rights are definitely more limited, whereas with the IEP, it's a lot stronger of parental rights when you're thinking about that, okay? So when we're looking at all of those, that's the difference. And here's an example that I could use if we're breaking down the difference between IEP and 504. So if a student is diagnosed with autism and their autism is preventing them from being able to access the general education curriculum, then that student can undergo evaluation to determine if they need an IEP, right? Autism is covered under one of those 13 disabilities that are covered under IDEA that'll let somebody know if they are or if they are eligible for an IEP. But again, if you have a student that's saying that it's always has to go to the bathroom, or they seem like they can't sit down and they always ask them to go to the bathroom or something of that nature, or they take forever on tests, okay, let's go with that. If somebody's taking forever on tests, it may not be that they need an IEP. So don't go around the school saying, oh, she takes forever. She need an IEP or something. She takes forever on those tests. Well, it depends on the reason why she's taking forever. So as we go through the RTI process and we do some evaluations, we determine that, man, she might be a slow processor, but she can access the general education curriculum. She may have accommodations in her 504 that give her extended time on tests, right? So that's what I'm saying. I just want you to be informed enough to know what next steps should be. So don't go around and say, oh, she need an IEP. Maybe not. Is it one of those 13 disabilities? Was there a formal evaluation? Was there, this is a highly regulated process. So don't sound misinformed, and also don't jump to judgment and conclusion, but most importantly, make sure that we understand the difference so we can help support students as much as we possibly can. So both IEPs and 504s are covered under RTI. Question: which students in your school are part of RTI? Answer: all of them. RTI stands for Response to Intervention, and the goal of RTI is to make sure that students have the support that they need in order to become highly successful. That's the goal of RTI. And everybody's a part of RTI because there are 3 tiers in RTI: Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is the whole class instruction that has universal supports. So that's why I say that everybody, well, not that's what I say, but that's why it's true that everybody is a part of RTI. So those are the Tier 1 supports. The teacher has strong classroom management, right? The teacher is able to deliver effective lessons. Like, those things matter and make sure that students are receiving the support they need. Differentiation is even inside of Tier 1 because the teacher needs to differentiate, because no matter what school you are in, no matter what classroom you're in, there's going to be a diverse group of learners. So you have to be able to diversify and differentiate. So that's all covered in Tier 1. Now, as you're doing all of these things inside Tier 1, you're differentiating, you have strong classroom management procedures, but you still have some students that are consistently falling short of the classroom expectations, or you still have some students that are, the gap is wide between where they are and where they need to be academically. That's when we start looking at Tier 2 interventions, because Tier 2 interventions are more small group focused. So now we're working on a small group of students, whether behaviorally or academically, that aren't quite getting it like the majority of students. And they aren't quite getting it based on Tier 1 interventions with the whole group instruction or the regular differentiation. They need a little bit more support. That's where Tier 2 comes in. And then Tier 3 is, even after students are working in those small group support, they need even more individualized support. That's more one-on-one time or counseling, therapy, things like that. That's now Tier 3. And then after that is when you look into evaluating for IEP and things of that nature. So the way I like to think about it is, in Tier 1, that's whole group, that's everybody. Tier 2 is when you start focusing on small group interventions. And then Tier 3 is when you start focusing on individualized instruction, right? So we go from whole to small to 1. And we're going from Tier 1 to Tier 2 to Tier 3. And that is then what you do before you start looking at, evaluating for IEPs and things like that. Students need to make sure they go through the full RTI process, before we start looking at IEPs and things like that. So what I'm saying is, you can't just say, I think this student needs an IEP, right? The data has to show that they've gone through the 3 tiers of RTI, and now we're looking for an evaluation. That's one of the ways to qualify. There are other ways, but that's one of the ways to qualify for an IEP. Okay, which again is not the goal. The goal of RTI is to not move students through the tiers. The goal of RTI is to make sure that students have the support that they need at the level that they're on to keep them from progressing through the tiers. It would be amazing if everybody would be in Tier 1 support, right? That is actually the goal. Historically, we're looking at 80 to 85% of students in public schools are going to be in Tier 1 of RTI. Right, so the other 15 to 20% are going to be spread between Tier 2 and Tier 3. So the goal is to have as many students as possible in Tier 1, right? And actually, if you're saying, man, I don't 80 to 85% in Tier 1, no, I'm more like 50%, I'm more like 40%, 30%. Well, I would pause, because at that point with Tier 1, that could be a result of teacher ineffectiveness. And that would be super important to make sure that as a teacher, you increase the efficacy in your practice so that you can become more impactful for students. Because when you are a highly effective teacher, then you can highly impact with the majority of your students being in tier 1 and then moving on to tier 2 and tier 3 as needed. So that is super important. And in the next lesson, again, the full course, that's just the introduction, so we know all the definitions and what they are. But now we're going to dive into, so what are some of the accommodations? What are modifications? How do I know when to move from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3? How do I provide appropriate support in tier 1 so that I don't need to move to tier 2, tier 3? How do I identify, like, now all the questions that you still have now about the RTI process and IEPs and 504s, that's what we're breaking down in the rest of the course, which already exists in Impact with the workbook and the community, but also we'll be diving into next week and for the next couple of weeks until we kind of work our way through making sure that you understand how to support diverse learners. So you can join Impact in the description below, and you can continue to join us as we continue the conversation next week. But after this, we are going to dive into the new Teacher Quick Tip of the Week, where I give you a quick tip that is game changing. You can apply it right now and make a difference in your class today. Right after this. What if I told you that the principles that are being taught in this video could be taught to your school community live and in person? Well, the answer is yes. I'm Daryl Williams Jr., and you know that I'm on a mission to help 1 million students be able to live the life that they choose, not the life they're forced to settle for. And I do that by empowering new teachers to have a big impact on student achievement data without burning out, without feeling unsupported, and without changing who they are. So if there's a message that I can empower your students, your staff, your school community with, I would love to pop up in person and make that happen and provide massive value for your school community. Check the link in the description below to fill out a booking form, and somebody from the team will get back to you about how we can work together. Welcome to the new Teacher Quick Tip of the Week. I'm gonna give you one game-changing tip that you can apply in your classroom today to make a huge change. And this one is simple, they're all simple, but how about resetting the room or resetting student attention? I was thinking about that because there's so many times I'm in a room or a classroom and the teacher is just droning on and 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 going. And well, think about it like this. When you are sitting at a public, okay, at the time we're recording this, it is a debate season in terms of presidential candidates. They're looking at the election in 2024. And one of the things that is really popular about all of these candidates is that they are going around doing speeches and things of that nature. If you listen to any of their speeches, doesn't matter which candidate it is, if you listen to any of their speeches, you'll notice that they're not just talking for 45 minutes, for 60 minutes, for 90 minutes, and the crowd is just dead. The crowd is getting into it. Why? Because they're using their slogans, they're using their phrases. They'll say something that gets the crowd to cheer. They'll say something that the crowd starts clapping. They'll say something that the crowd laughs at. They'll say something that you know what I'm saying? Like, they'll say something that gets the crowd energized. And of course, that is tactical as a presidential candidate, but inside the classroom, it's the same thing, where when you get into your lesson and you're talking and it can become boring. I was trying to look for another word because I don't want to hurt your feelings, but it can become boring if you're just standing there and talking and going through the lesson. Naturally, people are going to tune out. But when I say reset the room or reset attention, what I'm saying is occasionally put something in there that is going to re-spark students' attention. Now, I'm not telling you to jump on the desk and bang the gavel and scare students, but I'm saying there's some things that you can incorporate that is going to help you to re-engage the students. And what we like to call them are pattern interruptions, because the pattern that's going on in the brain is I'm just going to sit here and you're talking and I might be taking notes and I start thinking about something else. Now I'm looking out the window. Like, there needs to be a pattern interruption that brings my attention back to the teacher. And some of my favorite pattern interruptions are, I always like to teach principles and share strategies. So that's the principle. There needs to be a pattern interruption often that brings them back in. Some of my favorite pattern interruptions are telling jokes. And I'm not saying you have to, I'm saying I do. So every couple of minutes, I might sprinkle a joke in there that makes the students perk up, or ask a question that, even if it's rhetorical, might have students, come back. There's some phrases I like to use. I like to say things like, watch this, or do me a favor, right? Or show a GIF, right? If you're going through the PowerPoint presentation, there's a GIF that Maybe they don't laugh out loud, ha 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 ha, ha, but they might chuckle like, ha, and it brings them kind of back to the screen. So incorporating pattern interruptions that reset attention is effective in long-term engagement when we're talking about delivering to students. You're welcome. That's your new teacher quick tip of the week. Right after this, we're diving into the teaching lounge, which is my favorite place to be because we don't talk about students. We don't talk about just the issues and not find solutions, but we get together, answer community question that you might have right after this. Question for you. What are you doing on Tuesday night? The answer could be learning the game-changing formula to take control of your career without waiting on administration, without feeling unsupported, and without spending a whole lot of money. You can join us for our free workshop where we are going to unpack the 3D Teacher Success Formula that's going to teach you the one thing that you have to do to take control of your career and become the teacher you've always wanted to be and make the impact you've always wanted to make. It's right inside of your control. All you have to do is click the link in the description below to register for the free workshop, newteacherbigimpact.com/workshop, and I'll see you on Tuesday night. Welcome to the Teacher's Lounge, where the question this week is from one of our subscribers. And again, if you want to ask a question, all you have to do is be a member of Impact, put it on the discussion board, I'll see it, and I'll be able to answer it right here, right now. One of the questions that came in this week is, what is your favorite call and response? And I'm going to get on somebody's nerves with this because you just want an answer and I like to talk. So my favorite call and response, I can't just give you a ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I can't just give you a hey, 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 class, class, class. I can't just give you one of those. My favorite classroom call and response is the one that is consistent and the one that is clear, the one that is natural, and the one that is effective. My favorite call and response is clear, consistent, natural, and effective. I teach principles, I share strategies. The principle is you want to utilize a call and response that when you say it, students understand that I'm going to respond and I am going to now get quiet and pay attention to whatever is coming next. It doesn't matter what you say, to be honest. There are definitely some things you should not say, and don't say anything that's going to get you, fired or end up on the news or anything like that. But my favorite call and response is one that is consistent. Every time I need students' attention, I'm going to use this. And I incorporated several, so it wasn't always the same exact thing, but I'm going to use a call and response when I need student attention. It is clear. This is what I do. This is what you do, right? It is natural. It is something that feels right to me, so I can say it easily or I can do it easily, And it's effective because once I say it, students now understand that it's time to get quiet and it's time to pay attention, and they actually do. Okay, so if you say, it doesn't matter if you say ba da ba ba ba, and students are supposed to say I'm loving it, and then you get into the lesson, there's still students talking. That wasn't a good call and response. Not because it was the McDonald's theme. It wasn't a good call and response because it was not effective, where students did not do the thing that you wanted them to do, which was get completely silent and pay attention. So you would ba da ba ba ba, I'm loving it all over again until students get quiet and pay attention. Right? And of course, you would incorporate that with positive narration. You would also incorporate that with some rewards and consequences. You can incorporate that with many different things to make sure that that it is actually effective. But most importantly, you're practicing, doing it over and over again. Because we don't just practice until we get it right. We practice until they can't get it wrong. So you need to practice until it gets to the point where whatever call and response it is, what was one of the ones that my coworkers used to use? He would say, class, class. They'll say, yes, yes. Listen, it's funny because everybody in the building, he was a 4th grade teacher. Everybody in the building understood that when this man said, class, class, we respond, yes, yes. It became a running joke. Even other teachers in the building, when they see him, they be like, class, class. And he'd be like, ha, 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 But because he said all the time, kindergarten students that never even were in his classroom would understand that if he said class, class, we respond with yes, yes. And it was consistent, it was firm, and when he said it, it got silent. Okay? So I'm not saying that you now go into your classroom and say class, class, students are gonna say yes, yes, and people are gonna start paying attention. What I'm saying is when it is natural for you, when it is clear what students are supposed to do, when you consistently use it and it's effective because students are doing the thing that you want them to do, that is a good classroom call and response. Okay, but to answer your question, my favorite call and response is when I say dream, you say big. Dream big, dream big. When I say live, you say right. Live right, live right. When I say work, you say hard. Work hard, work hard. When I say don't, you say quit. Don't quit, don't quit. I just like things like that. So I would say, you just heard them. I would give like one syllable positive call and responses. All right, dream big, work hard. One syllable, one syllable each. Dream big, work hard, live right, don't quit. That's what I would do. All right, let's dive into our exit ticket today, because what type of teacher would I be if I didn't make sure that you understood the lesson objective today? And your exit ticket as we land the plane here is, what is the difference between an IEP and a 504? Also, we have two questions today. What percentage of students in your school are involved in RTI? I want to make sure that you understood the lesson objective today from the Teacher Toolbox. So answer those questions in the description below so I can make sure that you got it. And remember, if you're ready to dive into the full training, it already exists inside of Impact, where our goal is to help you become the teacher you've always wanted to be and make the impact you've always wanted to make. In the meantime, as you transition over there, before you click the link in the description, make sure you share this podcast and share it with somebody who enjoys Skittles. Why are we sharing with somebody who enjoys Skittles? Because Skittles are the most diverse candy I can think of, and we were talking about supporting diverse learners, and Skittles have a lot of colors. So share this podcast with somebody you know that likes Skittles. And even if you don't decide to share it, make sure you leave a review so the algorithm can share it for you. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.